Well, thanks for joining us for the 2022 crop insurance update. My name's Corey. I'm with KW Insurance, and I'm going to walk you through the changes for the 2022 crop year next year and review this last year and how some of these claim payments are going to work and what an incredible benefit there is to being in revenue protection. So for 2021, the worst drought for much of our area for 20 plus years. SCO and ECO, those county disaster programs you can pay into on the crop insurance side, should pay out 100%. In most of our counties. A huge amount of claims are being processed, which is sort of delaying that process to some extent. So just be patient with your adjusters, and if you haven't heard from one, of course, please give us a call because they should have called you by now if the claim's been turned in. Premium payments not due till November is part of the drought relief package. So for you guys that got your statements now, they actually put your due date on that off until November, which will give us some extra time to get these claims processed and have the claim settle up your crop insurance, hopefully, instead of you having to write a check. So we had one of the biggest price increases from the base to the harvest price ever. Many crops will be paying 130 to 150% of your initial guarantee, so that's really good news in a bad year like we've had here. And then some $200,000 plus claims that normally would have to be reviewed will be exempt from reviews because of the claims load. So some things they did to relieve some pressure because of this huge area of drought, not only Montana, but we're looking at Washington, North Dakota, some South Dakota. This drought is really widespread and it's taxing the system. So they gave us some relief there. So that's good news. What we're going to review going forward, the base price is set for winter wheat, of course. That's for this fall at $7.11 a bushel. That's the highest that's been for a long time. There's been some changes to the malt barley endorsement the last couple of years. We'll go through the quality loss option for most crops, discuss SCO for 2021, and explain again how that program works. It's been fantastic for our agency. And then the yield exclusion option, and the other good thing is they changed the PRF, the grass and hay sales closing date, to December 1st. So that gives us more time for you to decide whether you want to insure that grass or that forage ground on this rainfall insurance. So first off, some stuff we review every year just to make sure you don't fall through the cracks. If you're a beginning farmer rancher or a veteran farmer rancher, which means you must not have had an insurable interest in a farmer ranch for more than 5 years, excluding any year you're under 18, on active duty in the military, or gone to college. If any of those fit for you, if you fit in those criteria, that means we get to give you a pretty good sized discount on your crop insurance. You need to fill out this BFR app before this sales closing date to qualify for wheat, which is September 30th. So let us know right away if you're a beginning farmer and fall into this category, because we'd really like to get you in that program. You get an additional 10% premium subsidy. It's easier to transfer yields from the previous producer. And then in bad years like this, normally we would, if you have a 0 on a unit, let's say, you wouldn't actually have a 0 that carries through on your average. We would plug in 60% of the county average for that. If you're a beginning farmer rancher, you get to use 80% of the county average to replace those bad years. So there's some more benefits for softening the blows in some bad years for you beginning farmers as well. Native sod busting obviously is really discouraged in the new farm bill. If you do any at all of this native sod busting, you need to talk to the FSA and to us before doing it, because it could really get you in a pickle if you don't have this planned out right with the FSA. So on our side, it's uninsurable without a written agreement the first year. So it must be broke by June 30th for fall seeded crops and November 15th for spring seeded crops. So if you're going to seed winter wheat on, this is basically any new breaking this fall, you had to have that broke out by June 30th or it won't be insurable at all. We can't even do a written agreement on that. If you're going to seed some stuff next spring that's going to be new breaking, make sure you have that broke out by November 15th this fall, or it won't be insurable this next spring. Any native sod broke out after February 14th, or February 7th, 2014 will receive 65% of the county average for the first 4 years it's seeded. So this is just native sod, right? This isn't new breaking of all types, but just native sod. So if it says NAG or sod on your maps, if you're going to do anything with that land, this is where this will come into play. It used to be that we could seed that native sod ground to 4 years to an uninsurable crop to get out of this penalty. Like let's say do triticale 4 years in a row or something in hay. Now basically for the first 4 years you seed that to an insurable crop, you're going to have 65% of the county average, and you're going to lose 50 points of your premium subsidy. So you're paying all the bill with only a fraction of the coverage basically on this. Always talk to the FSA before doing any new braking. Obviously, that's the biggest thing, is if you get in trouble on their side, that can trigger all sorts of premium or subsidy reductions all through all these programs, and possibly disqualify you for some of these programs. So let's go through CRP braking. This is another thing that gets confused and oftentimes done incorrectly on the insurance here. So CRP braking receives 100% of the county average if seeded within 2 years of coming out of CRP. So if it's coming out of a government program, whether it's CRP or for some reason it was an EQIP, as long as you seed it within 2 years of coming out of that program, you get to start with 100% of the county average, which is really a pretty darn good deal for ground that's breaking. So how would that work? So let's say you had CRP that came out in the fall of 2019. The fall of 2019 actually is the beginning of the 2020 crop year. So if you seeded winter wheat in the fall of 19, that'd actually be your 2020 crop, right? So we need to seed this, remember, within 2 years of it coming out of the program. So it came out for the 2020 crop year. And so we could seed it in the spring of 2020. That'd still be the 2020 crop year, right? And then we have the fall of 2020, which would be the beginning of 2021, and the spring of 2021 to get that seeded to fall within this 100% of the county average deal. If we screw up and we wait longer than that, then it becomes new braking, and we have to do a written agreement to even get it insurable. And then at that point, you're either going to get 80% or possibly 65% of the county average for that stuff. So always make sure you understand when that came out of that program, because that's, if there's ever a problem, that's when we have it, is that people assume that maybe that came out in the fall of 2019 and it really was the fall of 2018, and then we go to insure it and it's too late oftentimes to even get it insured for that crop year. So CRP out after 2 crop years. After 2 crop years, it becomes new braking, just like we talked about. So just like breaking out an old hayfield, requires a written agreement. Oftentimes those written agreements have to be done by the sales closing date. So for winter wheat, we'd have to know by September 30th. For the spring crops, we have to know by March 15th. And that's where it can really fall through the cracks if it falls into that category. So some of that we can do all the way up to acreage reporting, but it all depends on the soil type that it's in. So we really need to know if you're going to do any stuff that's breaking. And new breaking as well would be any ground that hasn't been planted and harvested sometime in the last 3 years. So if you have got stuff that's just been in hay ground for 3 years in a row, you didn't plant that, you might have harvested it, but it wasn't planted and harvested, so technically that'd be new breaking, and we need to do some stuff to get that insurable for the first year that you seed it. One last loophole that people oftentimes get screwed up with is they might take hay ground out fallow at a year, so they assume, well, it's been out a year, that it would be insurable, and then seed it. Well, even after that full year of a fallow break in there, it's not insurable without a written agreement until it's seeded one time to a crop. So that's one thing to always check on. So on added land, if you're going to add land to your operation, if it's between 0 and 2,000 acres or up to a max of 2,000 acres, you can use the better of the averages of your units on your farm for that crop. So like, let's say you have a wheat average over all the units in your same map area of 40 for wheat on your farm. On that new land, you could use the average of those units of that 40 bushels and copy that over. If the county average is only 30, you still get to use the better of either or. If you go over 2,000 acres, you're limited to just using the county average on that new land. So one way around that is to share a lease with the person you're getting the land from. That would allow you to use their yields, and you need to do that for at least a year. Otherwise, if you're just going to buy 2,000 plus acres of land, we're pretty much limited to the county average at that point. PLC payments for this fall. I know we've had good run up in wheat prices, but remember your payments that you're getting this fall on PLC are off of the 2022 crop year's prices. So we're always a year behind in these programs. So in 2019, it was 92 cents a bushel for PLC. So for your 2020 payment, it's calculated now and it'll be 45 cents a bushel, which means for you guys with a lot of wheat base acres, you're going to get about half of what you got for your check the previous year, but you're still going to get a check, right? Which is a nice surprise. Barley, 20 cents this year that you're going to get paid off of. It was 26 cents last year. So you're going to get most of what you got for your barley payment. And then canola is about 1.7 cents this year and was 5 cents last year. So for you guys with canola base, you're going to get about 25% of what you had the year before, but that's still about 20 bucks an acre if you have a 1,200 pound canola yield, right? So long story short, you're going to get a PLC payment this fall if you farmed last year for last year's bad prices. Next fall, we won't have probably a PLC payment for the 2021 crop year because the prices were so good, right? So what about the prices in the winter wheat? So for 2021, we started at $4.98 a bushel. And then we actually ended up with a harvest price of $7.11. So 143% of what we ended up running up 43% above what our starting price was, basically, which is one of the biggest increases I've seen since we've done this crop insurance stuff. Organic started at $10.30 a bushel and wound up with a harvest price of $14.70. And then for 2022, your starting price or your base price for winter wheat, it's still calculating, but would be $7.14 a bushel right now, going into next year's crop, and then $14.50 a bushel for organic winter wheat. So really good starting points for both of these crops, right? A chance to actually maybe lock in a bit of a profit here. So here's the rest of the harvest and the base prices for 2021. So pretty much every crop ran up that had revenue protection on it, right? So we already went through the winter wheat. On the spring wheat, we started at $6.53 a bushel for your base price. So what you paid premium on, it actually went up to $9.21 a bushel. So that's what your loss is paid on, is at $9.21 a bushel. So pretty phenomenal increase there. Organic spring wheat, $13.50 a bushel starting price, ended up at $19.05 payout. The one crop that didn't turn out as well for people on the insurance end is the durum. And the reason for that is when they set the durum price in the spring, they just figure out how much different durum is from spring wheat price-wise. In this spring, it really wasn't a big spread. Well, that spread carries through into harvest because the durum on the crop insurance is just tracking the spring wheat futures price as well. So spring wheat went up to $9.21, durum went up then to $9.56. As you can see, it's the same spread between the $6.53 and the $6.78 base prices. I know that open market durum right now might be 15 bucks a bushel, but this is all just based off of futures markets and the crop insurance, right? So if you have a durum loss, you're going to get $9.56 a bushel for the bushels you're short. It's sure a heck of a lot better than the $6.78 we started with, but it doesn't quite reflect what happened in that durum market. Canola, a really big run up, that is based off of canola futures. It's still averaging during this month, so as long as this month holds out, last I checked it was 32 cents for canola. It started at 21 cents, so that's 156%, a 56% run up from where we started. And then barley's the other crop, kind of like durum, that doesn't work quite as well as maybe wheat does on the revenue protection. You still get a better payment than we would have had, but it's based off the corn futures. So we started at $4.18 a bushel. They're going to pay you at $4.79 a bushel this fall. Not as good as the $6 feed barley bids are around here, but at least it's better than where you started, right? So that's one crop that as well just reflects the futures market price. And then the peas are a total guess right now. They average from the beginning of August roughly all the way through the end of December, whatever the Pulse USA stuff gets reported for all the sales for all these crops. That's what they're going to use for the average. So we started at 20 cents on lentils. I'm guessing 30 cents. And that's probably low for the harvest price. 20 cents on small kabuli starting price, probably 30 cents for an ending. Small or smooth green and yellow peas, 12 cents for a starting price, a good 20-cent ending price, I'm guessing. And then large kabulis, probably 23 cents was the starting price, and then probably 35 cents for the ending. You're going to know at the end of December on that, beginning of January, depending when they release the numbers anyways, and then they'll trigger another loss payment for you guys at that point. So last year it was actually in January when it triggered, so you'll get that additional revenue in the next tax year that way, if it still works out that way. The malt barley harvest price is a little different. So how that works is once you apply a malt contract to your insurance, then we start working off the soft red winter wheat futures price instead of off the corn futures like we do on feed barley. The amount that price changes from the time they set the base price for this until the harvest price is set for that wheat futures market is what they're going to add or subtract from your barley contract for the harvest price. So for this year, the projected price was $6.41 a bushel. That's the futures market average for the soft red winter wheat futures for the month of February. When we got to harvest, they averaged that same futures market again, and it averaged $7.26 a bushel. So they figure out how much it went up. In this case, it went up 85 cents. So if your malt contracts you gave us for your insurance average $5 a bushel, they're going to add 85 cents to those contracts and pay you on $5.85 a bushel for the insurance. So this is really pretty much what happened with most of the malt contracts because they were close to $5, a lot of them. So in that scenario, you still end up way better than just having feed barley because we're paying you $1 a bushel above the feed price for the insurance. This year, because of how things worked on the new feed barley endorsement, or malt barley endorsement, which we're going to go through, there really won't be any reduction for your barley, even if it doesn't make malt, because feed's worth more than malt, which is a fluke. But we'll go through that in the upcoming slides. So what happens when the price goes up at harvest? Normally we were reviewing what happened when it goes down because that's what kept happening, right? But when the price goes up, we get a real bargain on the crop insurance here. So in this example, which is close to what happened, we're going to say we have a base price of $5 a bushel in the spring for your wheat, let's say. You have a 30 bushel guarantee, so you have $150 an acre total guarantee on that unit. At harvest time, when they refigure things, first off, we end up cutting 10 bushels an acre, which is close to what most of the wheat ran this year probably around here. So we had a drought year, we cut 10 bushels. The price increases though on the futures market in August when they figure the harvest price to $10 a bushel. So now we've gone from $5 to $10. The guarantee then increases. So that's the first thing they're going to do is go back and refigure this $150 an acre guarantee with the new harvest price. So your guarantee in that unit increases to $10 a bushel times your 30 bushel guarantee, or $300 an acre. So now we paid premium on $150 an acre coverage, and we now have $300, right? You've got that 10 bushels of production to sell at the elevator, hopefully close to the $10, but the insurance does not care what you sell it for. So in theory, you have $100 worth of grain to haul to the elevator. The 10 bushels you cut at harvest for your insurance claim purposes is valued at $10 a bushel because that's the harvest price. So they're going to say you have $100 worth of production. You have a $300 an acre guarantee minus our $100 worth of crop harvested. So we have a $200 an acre loss payment. So you still have 10 bushels to sell. So this is almost exactly what happened this year, right? We may not have doubled the price, but it went up substantially. So you guys that are short production are going to end up getting paid a lot more than what we initially figured on your guarantees. There's some changes for the malt barley endorsement from 2021, so starting last year and going forward. So the biggest change is that for the feed barley price they're going to use to figure out how much different your malt price is versus the feed price that you'll be getting if it gets rejected. They're going to base that feed price not off of a futures market like they used to do, but off of all the local feed barley bids. So this year, it's kind of a negative thing, right? Because we can sell barley up into Canada for $6 or $7 a bushel. Our malt barley is probably only worth $5 a bushel. And so when they do the formulas, there's really no reduction for the fact that your barley didn't make malt this year. That's an anomaly, not a normal thing, but that's just the way this year worked. On the old malt endorsement, they would have looked back to the futures price for feed barley, which ended up settling out at like $4.80 a bushel, and that's what they would have used. So this year, if you have a malt quality problem, that's not really going to help you a lot as far as reducing your bushels to get paid more, but your price that you're getting paid per bushel is certainly going to be higher than it is on the feed side. So here's a real simple malt example. We're going to say you have a $5 malt contract, and then your barley doesn't make malt. And so in this example, we're going to say feed barley is worth $3 a bushel when they call around to the elevators, which they'll do now. Your malt contract on the insurance's eyes is $5 for the average of your malt contracts. So the feed price is 60% of the malt price. The 10,000 bushels of malt we harvested in this example, then they're going to take times 60%, so they're only going to use 6,000 bushels for your claim instead of the whole 10,000 bushels. And that's how normally the malt endorsement would work to pay additional loss payments there. There is something we can do to at least not have to accept that 6,000 bushels that we just showed you on that previous example for your history. The quality loss option can be added. This doesn't apply to wheat much, and so we're probably not even going to add it on the wheat on your guys' policies. But on the barley side, there's a lot of times, and on the peas, that there's quality loss used to reduce your bushels to pay you more on a claim. If we add this option, those years when the quality loss was applied to pay you more for the claim side, we can actually go backwards and use your gross bushels, not the reduced bushels for your APH, which will help your yield quite a bit. So really quick, like here's one just sample APH. In 2017, this farm had 100 bushels they cut per acre, but because of all the quality issues, it got reduced down to 30 bushels an acre for crop insurance purposes. If we don't have the quality loss endorsement on here, we would have to accept this 30 bushels as our yield for that crop year, and that'll roll forward for 10 years in your APH. If we use that endorsement, that'll bump that yield back up to the 100 bushels you actually cut. So we'll quote all that for you guys in the spring on the peas and the barley. We should have quite a few barley producers that we can actually quote your actual reductions going backwards on that to see if it's worth the money or not. The other thing we can do is yield exclusion. That can be used any year that your county falls below 50% of average for a crop can be excluded from your APH. So if our spring wheat falls below 50% of average for Toole County this year, we could literally just wipe that year off of your guys' APH if you want us to. And that's YE, the yield exclusion, and we're going to probably add that onto everybody's stuff if it's not on there already, if you're up for that, because the cost is pretty minimal and it will allow us to erase these bad years so they don't have to carry on for 10 years on your APH there. So our suggestion with yield exclusion is just use it on any crops that you're doing enterprise units on, which for most people, that's most all crops. If you're doing optional units, like in this example here, it takes your premium from 19 bucks an acre up to 21.65 to apply that quality loss, to exclude those years, I mean, for the yield exclusion. That's a $2.65 increase in the premium. If you're in enterprise units, it doesn't even go up $1. It's about 80 cents for doing the same thing to your APH. So in optional units, these options are really expensive. In enterprise units, not as much, which is good news. So next up, we're going to go through the most exciting change that's going to be helpful to all of us this year, and that's enterprise units by type. So you guys, before when you were in enterprise units, you know, if you had winter wheat, spring wheat, and durum all on the same farm, they'd all get thrown into one pot before it got paid out. Well, now they've come out with these enterprise units by type for all the wheat types and all the pea types, which means no longer do we have to throw the winter wheat, spring wheat, and durum together into one big unit. We actually can have each one set up in a separate enterprise unit by type, basically. So now winter wheat, spring wheat, and durum are all separate enterprise units as long as you seed 20 acres of each type in 2 different sections. The same for peas. So now we don't have to throw chickpeas, lentils, and yellow peas all together into one unit. Same premium as before, but we need to make sure that we seed each type in 2 sections or more, and 20 or more acres in each section, which I'm going to go through an example here with you. So like we said before all the wheat types would have been thrown into one unit before it paid, all the pea types thrown into one unit, and then now we just have to have 20 or more acres of each type in 2 different sections. So here's how it will all lay out. So now it'll split the spring wheat from the durum from the winter wheat, the small caboolies from the large caboolies from the yellow peas, right? So here's an example of what would happen if you didn't seed enough acres of the different types to qualify for 2 separate enterprise units. In this example, we're going to use wheat. So in section 1, we have 100 acres of winter wheat. In section 2, we have 40 acres of winter wheat. So looking at that, we have 1 enterprise unit that qualifies there, right? So we've got 100 acres of winter wheat, 40 acres of winter wheat in a separate section, so more than 20 acres, so that would qualify for the enterprise unit. But now, with this enterprise units by type, we go out and we seed section 3 then to 200 acres of spring wheat in the spring. So to keep these separate by type, because we only have one section seeded to spring wheat, that's gonna by default throw the spring wheat then back in with the winter wheat into one big enterprise unit. If we catch this before acreage reporting, you actually can take that 200 acres of spring wheat and pay the optional unit premium on that if you want to, and we can split that off on its own. But that's way expensive, and that's the whole reason we're not doing that in the first place. So the moral of this example here basically, right, is that we want to see 20 or more acres of each type in two different sections. So now we've got the same setup, 100 acres of winter wheat and 100 acres and 40 acres of spring wheat. Sorry, 100 acres of winter wheat in one section, 40 acres of winter wheat in another section. But then we have 200 acres of spring wheat seeded in the spring in section 3, 300 acres of spring wheat in section 4. So now the spring wheat and the winter wheat can be split out into their own enterprise units, which was way more than ideal, right? Because those two crops can yield substantially different from each other. Like I said before, if you guys did enterprise units, that's one reason it was not done as often on wheat, is that it would throw winter and spring wheat together. Now we don't have to do. So why do you want to do enterprise units? Well, premium really is what it comes down to, right? So this slide shows us 65, 70, 75% levels anyway. 75% would be the most common. In an enterprise units, to throw all your winter wheat into one pot, your premium then would be $7.10 here. This is just only 100 acres in an enterprise unit, so the smallest discount we can get for that. If we switch that to optional units, it goes to $16 an acre. So you're paying $11 an acre more just to keep the winter wheat separate by section. Granted, sometimes in 1 year, it would be better to be in optional units like this year between the summer fallow and the recrop. There was some of those scenarios, but over time, every time we've run these scenarios for the extra premium you pay, I still think you're better being in enterprise units, especially now when you can keep the winter and spring types separate. So the next thing we're going to cover is the supplemental coverage option. These are both area coverage programs, supplemental coverage option and enhanced coverage option that you can buy into on the county-based level. The ECO program was just added this last spring for the spring crop, so we weren't able to do it on wheat yet. But to make this simple, basically, SCO covers from whatever coverage level you pick on your individual insurance up to the 86% level. So if you are at 75% on your underlying insurance and you do 86% on SCO, it's covering an 11% gap on the county side of things for you. This will make more sense, I think, as we get farther into this presentation. The ECO then that was added last year will allow us to insure up to 95% of your average yield that's triggered, though when the county actually gets below 95% or less. So what is SCO again? It's a county disaster program. So once the county falls below 86% of average, it starts to pay. When it gets down to whatever your underlying crop insurance level is, you get all your money out of this program. Paid out a lot of money during the last 5 years between droughts and price declines. It insures your farm up to the 86% level. Uses your yields on every unit once this triggers to determine how much to pay you. And just for example, one unit that we quoted here is $3 an acre for a $25 an acre guarantee on wheat. So, and it pays when things go south and not very far south in the county. So your odds of getting your money back out of this are pretty big. It can trigger without your farm triggering a loss or vice versa. So if you get hailed out but the county does well, then this won't trigger. If you have a really good crop or in a higher rainfall area of the county and you have a crop, it's possible that your crop insurance won't trigger, but you could get paid on this SCO stuff too as well. So the odds of payout are way higher with inflated prices like they are right now, and we're going to go through why that. So once again, what's ECO? It's just like SCO. It's triggered whenever the county falls below a certain level of its expected revenue. But this one triggers from the 86 to the 95% level. And then it pays per unit on your policy, but every single unit of that crop would trigger. So a 40 bushel wheat unit would pay more than a 30, but it's going to trigger across the board. So the premium is about 33% of your guarantee. SCO is closer to 15. So ECO is more expensive. One of the big reasons for that is that it's more likely to pay because it's a higher trigger level, but also there's less premium subsidy in that crop as well. So why do elevated prices increase your payment odds? So let's go through an example using kind of next year's probable spring wheat price here. Our county average for wheat in Toole County is pretty close to 40 bushels an acre. So we'll take 40 bushels times the 9 bushel spring wheat price that probably will be set next spring, hopefully, would give us a $360 an acre of expected revenue for Toole County. The county yield for 2022 ends up being 42 bushels per acre. So we're above what our average is, right? That 42 bushels actually is higher than the 40 bushels average for the county, which would make you think it wouldn't pay. But we're going to say that wheat falls back off to $6 a bushel, which is a likely scenario. So if we take $6 a bushel times the 42 bushels we actually harvested for the county, it was a pretty good year as far as yield, but the market tanked. The county only had $252 an acre of revenue, is how this program will look at that, divided into the $360 it was expecting, which gives us 70% average revenue, even with an above average bushel crop. So when the price is up, it's a lot more likely for it to fall off than to continue going up, right? When it falls off, it makes it easy to get paid on these programs, even if we have a pretty decent crop. That 70%, from this scenario here would trigger full payments on both ECO and SCO as long as you were at the 70% level or higher on your underlying insurance. So here's some quote examples. What really is appealing, from our opinion anyways, is to do enterprise units with SCO and ECO stacked together. So the left one, the blue one here, is enterprise units with just SCO. You have $190 an acre of coverage here. We're at the 75% level for winter wheat. That ends up being $11.74 an acre for $190 potential payout. If we switch that to optional units, our premium goes up to $23 an acre for the same coverage. Or we can stack enterprise units, SCO and ECO, increase our total guarantee to $210 an acre, and our premium's $18.47. $5 an acre less than just being in optional units and SCO, we get in $20 more an acre of guarantee. If that $18 seems like way too much premium, which it does for a lot of people, then the enterprise units with SCO stacked on top of each other are the next best thing there. So how do these programs work? You have your individual insurance level, of course, that you're purchasing. Then we have the SCO coverage that you can elect to stack on top of that. On top of SCO, you can stack ECO, and then you can also stack PLC payments on there. So for like this last year, where SCO and ECO trigger, plus we get a PLC payment from the previous year, and we get paid on our underlying crop insurance in this drought, we actually end up with more than what our total expected revenue was per acre if you just use our crop insurance guarantees with all those stacked. How was it paid? $4.4 million paid out the first 4 years of this program. In 2019, another $2.1 million got paid out, so there we're at 6.5. 2020 didn't pay as well because it actually was a pretty good year that year, and it shouldn't have paid, right? It did pay in Hill County and Liberty County on winter wheat for sure. And then this next year, it's going to pay pretty much in every county 100% that we cover here for insurance, so huge payouts. So for the amount of premium paid in versus what's paid out, a lot of money's been paid out here. So we always walk you through like our farm's actual example of what will happen here in 2021. So the first thing that we'll cover is what we have seeded for a crop mix. So there's 4,255 acres of crop seeded. And then I'm going to flip through these just quickly, just to show you kind of the mix of crops and explain that 1,200 acres of barley is a revenue protection crop. So that one will get additional price bump on the claims end. The 175 acres of yellow peas would be the same thing. And then the 1,500 acres of wheat as well. The flax and the mustard, those two crops aren't revenue protection crops, so we just have the same guarantee here at harvest as what we started with. That's one of the disadvantages of those crops on the insurance end. The mustard just works off whatever your contract price is, and the flax works off of whatever they set for a base price without an additional harvest price figure. And then 300 acres of cover crop, that's in an EQIP program, so we get paid through that, which helps with the revenue part, and we can graze it. But because it's an EQIP, of course, it's not on any of these insurance programs. So when we hit a disaster, we don't get paid on that on the insurance side. All the eligible crops up there that could be in SCO, which is all of them now at this point, are enrolled in SCO. We have to be in PLC at the FSA to be in the SCO program on the crop insurance side. So the wheat and the barley base that we have at the FSA, that's all in PLC. All our base acres, like I said, are enrolled in PLC. We have 1,700 base acres of wheat and 925 of barley. If you add those together, that's like 2,600 acres. Our total crop acres up here are 4,200 acres. The reason for that is that those base acres were all set back when it used to be crop fallow, kind of a half and half situation. And at least up to this point, they never let us increase base. So that stuck from the old farm programs at those many acres, even though we're cropping a lot more acres than that. It's the other advantage of the SCO program is it pays on all of our seeded acres, not just on the base. So here's our probable example for 2021 for Wendy's farm here. So Wendy's whole farm's enrolled in PLC. So we'll look at the estimated payments. You'll be getting paid for the 2020 crop year this fall, right? So even though the prices were really good this year, the payment we received this October actually is for the poorer prices in 2022. So on the 1,700 base acres of wheat, in these government programs, they only pay on 85% of the base acres. That number could go up or down, I'm sure, when they write the next farm bill, but for this purpose, still we're at 85%. So on the 1,700 base acres of wheat, it's going to pay on 1,445 acres. Remember from the slides previous, it's paying 45 cents a bushel for PLC on wheat. Our FSA yields about 35 bushels an acre. So if we take the 1,400 acres times the 35 bushels times 45 cents, which the 45 cents would trigger a $15.75 an acre payment, we get $22,700 roughly out of PLC on wheat. Remember, the barley is also going to trigger at 20 cents. That would be a $12,900 payment on the barley for a total PLC payment of $37,727 for our farm here. So what if we'd elected ARC? First off, it's quite possible that ARC maybe wouldn't even pay on these crops because the price went up so much from what its base price was. But assuming ARC could have paid out completely this year because of the drought, $17 an acre is the max payment we can get for wheat on ARC, which is $24,000. On the barley, $19 an acre is the max payment we could get there, so $14,900. So ARC would have paid $39,500 this fall. Our PLC payment should be about $37,500. So the difference is about $3,800 better to be in ARC. But remember, because we are in ARC in this example, we can't be in SCO. So we're going to see what SCO adds to our payout when we hit these disaster years here. So here's our actual SCO guarantees for 2021 off of Wendy's crop insurance. So the barley started at $21,800 basically. That increased to $25,000 because the harvest price went up for barley. So that's a big advantage of being in revenue protection as well if you're in SCO, is that you also get an adjustment upwards when the price goes up. So the wheat started at $28,000, about $39,200 will be the payout. So huge increases just from the RP side of this for SCO. And then the peas will pay, the mustard will pay, I'm sure, and then the flax. So those all together is $89,300. We don't get that payment till April, but we do know that that more than certainly is coming here. So one of the problems with this program is that you have to pay the premium usually in August. This year, obviously not till November like we talked prior, but you pay the premium and then you get your payment on it later. We can add our PLC payment on top of that. So now our total disaster payout for PLC plus SCO is $125,000. Had we been in ARC County, we'd only get $39,000 because we can't be an SCO if we're in ARC. So that's a 2021 payout difference of $85,000 roughly. The premium for that SCO coverage for 2021 was $97,000. So $9,700, sorry. So $9,700 for an $89,000 payout. So this has happened year after year since 2015. We really only missed 1 year where we didn't get as good a return on the SCO, which would have been last year when we had really good crops and the price ran up. So because we are in ARC, we can be in SCO. If you're in ARC, because we're in PLC, we can be in SCO. If you're in ARC, you can be in ECO. There's not a linkage requirement at the FSA. So regardless, let's look at what our ECO payout for this last crop year is going to be. So our barley, peas, and flax could all be in ECO. Those are the only crops that were eligible this last crop year. This next year, we will be able to add wheat, and we should be able to add mustard in the spring as well. So the barley paid out Started at 17,800. It also increases with the revenue going up, so to 20,600. The peas paid, the flax paid, the mustard there was no ECO available on, and the wheat no ECO available for 2021. So our total ECO payout was $30,300. If we could have added the wheat acres into there, that would have easily been another 20,000 bucks we could tack on top of that. But regardless, our SCO is 89,300, the ECO 30,300 for $119,600 extra payment above our normal crop insurance that was all triggered on the county falling into a disaster, right? So 17,400 additional payment for both of a premium payment for both of those programs together. So we actually end up netting, let's see, $102,000 net above what we paid into that program here. So what's our total SCO payout since 2015, since the program started? We've had a $257,000 payment from SCO, $69,000 in additional premium. We've netted $188,500 over that time frame, plus $102,000 for this year. So over a 6-year period, just on our 4,000 acres of crop every year, we're going to net $290,000 additional dollars above what where we would have been had we not been in these programs in a 6-year period. We sent you guys quote sheets. This is just an example of how to read the quote sheet itself. So the levels are over on the left-hand side where this red is at on the screen. There's your unit number. The crop that we're looking at is up here where I'm circling on the practice and type. So this is summer, fall, spring wheat, unit 101, which is north of home for us. Here's the location that's in. And then our approved yield is sitting right here at the 37 bushels. Then you can look at your levels. And if you come across to where my red dot is here, you can see the premiums for the revenue protections, $981 for $216 guarantee, $434 for stacking SCO on top, which would give you another 31 bucks, then $8 more for ECO, which would stack 25 more dollars on top in this example. So that's a quote sheet that a lot of you guys maybe got either emailed or mailed to you if you're watching this online and you weren't able to make our meeting. We also are going to go through some checklist stuff on the phone with you. If you weren't at the meeting, we're going to call and go through this with you step by step. So we'll skip through this part. And then the last thing we always cover is what we did on our farm. In 2021, there's the 3rd year now of no seed treat, no oat spray for the last long time, probably 10 years here, I think. Precipitation from January through July was only 3.5 inches and one of the hottest summers on record. So no starter with any of the spring crops. We started just putting compost extract, which is a really dense mix of biology from a lot of Montana raised, a lot of home raised compost. So we're checking that biology under the microscope to make sure it's good stuff, putting it into solution and water and squirting that through the drill to let the biology try and release the phosphorus and stuff that we normally would have had in that starter. We're still putting nitrogen on top, and that's UAN plus humic acid is how we're doing that through the sprayer. The humic acid's in there to kind of tie the salts up and kind of buffer some of the bad stuff from the UAN. It also stabilizes the UAN so it doesn't volatilize as much. One of the biggest focuses, of course, of this is the savings part, right? So 2018 versus 2022. In 2018, we spent $359,000 in seed, chemical, and fertilizer on only 3,800 acres of crop. In 2020, we had 4,500 acres of crop. We're pretty close, 4,493, and we only spent $182,000 there. So $176,000 difference between those crop years with 648 more acres, and we've just continued to follow that pattern of less expense. Are the crops as good? Possibly not, but the input side of it is substantially less than where we were back then. So, on the combine adjustments for the stripper header, we switched to a stripper header and try to cut most of our crops with that if they're tall enough. One of the biggest labor-intensive things for switching that back and forth between the draper and the stripper is putting these straight bars on the rotor. We put 12 straight bars on the rotor to help with rotor loss and for thrashing a wheat especially. Your concaves are set way tight, like 0 to 2, because you're really not running any material through there. You just want to get that grain rubbed out and dropped onto the sieves there. And then the feeder house adapter on our case combine at least has to be rolled all the way back to help the grain feed into the feeder house, and then we have to reset that when we put our other header back on. Skid plates were replaced with hardened steel covered skid plates. Those are fantastic for holding up better than like the ones on the left that you see here. They make a hardened steel cover for the skids. If you guys are running these strippers, that's a really good thing to invest in. And then the problem with the hardened steel is it did tend to spark, which caused a few fires. Then Wendy came up with this idea to put these poly skid covers on there, which is a fantastic idea that we got from Gerber's in Great Falls. So all we did is get that cut to the dimensions of the skid plate, drilled some holes through the skid, and then just bolt those on. And then like this year where we had to cut so low, we were probably replacing at least the outside ones every 1,000 acres, but it really saved on the wear on the skid plates themselves, and then you don't have any sparking either. So. Overall impression, easily increases combine acres by 30% per day. No broke sections to replace, and use 60% of the fuel compared to a draper. Leaves awesome cover, especially like last year where we had normal crops. And so far never had to fix anything major in season on that thing. So some of the crop was too short this year to get all the grain. Some of that we just decided it was worth leaving just a bushel or two of grain out there just to leave the cover. And some of the stuff like the flax we just had to switch back to the draper for that crop. So we also use a microscope here to check out the biology to make sure we're putting good stuff on. My sister went through the Elaine Ingram microscope training and then trained Wendy and myself on that as well. So this winter maybe we'll have a microscope training here at the office that we can kind of walk you guys through, just because it's a good way to realize what's going on in your soil. These are just examples of slides. That stick on the left is a good healthy fungal growth there. So you can see the squared off segmented brown stick looking thing. That's what actually good fungus looks like in your soil. The right side is a testate amoeba. Just for example, all those things floating around it are all bacteria, and that testate amoeba actually ingests those, digests those, and then spits them out in a form that the plant can more readily use for nutrients. So, and Johnson-Su's, you can come out sometime if you're interested in this. We can show you how we did the Johnson-Su bioreactors. That's a static compost method that's not as much labor once they're filled because you don't have to turn it. And then that should give us really biologically diverse compost by next spring to use for that extraction. And what are we seeing? Like here's a Regen Lab soil test that we got back that shows that our total biomass in the soil now is at the very good range from all of the stuff that we switched, basically. And then the fungal diversity actually is up above average too, which is a really good sign because we had no fungus in this ground before at all. So, and then my sister also started her own soil lab. If you guys are looking to have samples analyzed, she'll actually spend a good couple hours under a microscope looking at the soil that you send her, identifying all the different levels of life form that we can find in there when it's been extracted out, the fungal to bacterial ratio, and then she would be more than happy to discuss on the phone the findings with you too. So a lot more personal service from this sort of a lab testing. She'll also attach pictures of what she found in the soil. And she has her own website and her own lab, which is SoilScope. So if you go to soilscope.com, you can check that out as well. So what did we learn in 2022? Bad things come with bad droughts. Increased weed pressure. We're actually having to go spray glyphosate on most of our stubble that didn't canopy in this horrible drought because of the weed pressure that came in there. Nature hates void, right? And so it's going to cover the ground with something. And this easiest thing for it to start with is kochia. So we had a lot of kochia come back. It didn't rain all the way until about 3 weeks before harvest, and then we got a couple inches of rain, which the crop canopy was bad anyways. That sparked all those weeds to get going, and so we were going to try and hold out and not spray a lot of this stuff, but probably 2/3 of our farm we ended up spraying just to eliminate the weed seed pressure for next year on that kochia. Hopefully we can get away from doing that. I know we can when the crops canopy better because we hadn't been fall spraying for several years, but in a drought, we're kind of forced to do things that really aren't maybe on the long-term goal of our farm here. Increased combine wear, obviously we all experience that, right? Cutting short crops. You can still pull a crop with very little rainfall, 3.5 inches, all recrop, and we're still pulling 15 to 20 bushel spring wheat, 20 to 25 bushel winter wheat, 18 bushel peas. So the actual bushels per inch of rain that we're pulling really is, it's pretty amazing what we can do even with all that heat, I guess. And last year when we had only 7 inches of rain, we're pulling 40 bushel spring wheat off of here. So I think things are starting to work. We just need some years where it needs to start to rain. Mowing's a great way to stop the seed set in kochia if done when flowering. We have a Schulte mower where we're mowing all those bottoms and the road ditches and the things where the kochia doesn't get sprayed. That mowing is a wonderful way to just grind all that stuff and stop it from setting a bunch of seed. Cover crop makes a great emergency feed, although this morning we did find a calf dead out in the cover. We were just moving off of that. And you do have more of a potential for nitrate and prussic acid problems when we're in a drought, and I think that's maybe what happened there. So biology can work in place of starter fertilizer. We're going to keep doing that, so we'll have multiple years under our belt pretty soon. That should get better the longer that we keep bringing biology back to keep ramping up what's in the soil. And then intensive grazing is one of the quickest ways to improve your ground. So once again, soilscopelabs.com. That's my sister's lab there if you guys are interested in biological testing or discussing some of this biological farming with us or with her. And we just really thank you for taking the time to roll through this presentation with us. So if you have any questions, go to kwinsurance.com or just call our office here and we'd be more than happy to go through any of this stuff one-on-one with you guys.